Good morning, everyone. This is part one of the continuing of the budget hearings for department budgets, and we have a number of departments reporting this morning. Beginning now, we'll be hearing from the city coordinator departments, a series of them, and then we'll be following up at about 11 o'clock. We'll be hearing a budget presentation from the Minneapolis Television Network, followed by the Department of Human Resources. But if we could begin our morning with Mr. Cronk, our city coordinator, and if you could walk us through what we're expecting for the next hour and a half, would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Quincy. It's a pleasure to be here. And as you mentioned, we'll be hearing from all the departments that report to the coordinator today. And so in the morning, we'll be hearing from Intergovernmental Relations, the city coordinator, program areas, 311, communications, and neighborhood community relations. In the afternoon, you'll be hearing from HR, IT, finance and property services, as well as the convention center in Minneapolis. The coordinator function really is responsible for providing the administrative and management systems of the city. And so we are pleased to talk about how we're doing that in an effective and efficient way. And even in the last 6 months, the coordinator areas have thought through how we're going to do that and the values that we bring to that work, be collaboration, transformative, and results driven. So you'll see that embedded in all the presentations that you'll be hearing today. With that, I'll pass it out to our deputy city coordinator.
Great. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Nuria Rivera-Vandermeid. I'm the Deputy City Coordinator for the City of Minneapolis and happy to walk us through our budget presentation today. Just a high-level org chart, and you'll see on the right-hand side all the coordinator departments listed out. And if you, I'm happy to answer questions for any of the slides presented here. I'm going to try to focus the bulk of my comments to those items that are change items in the budget for this year as we move forward. Here is a high-level budget summary of the coordinator's office, and this includes intergovernmental relations. Our steadfast leader in IGR, Jean Ranieri, was unable to be with us today, so I hope you'll bear with me as I mention and highlight some of their the purpose and their services that they provide before we move into the coordinator department office itself. Intergovernmental relations is our legislative arm here in the city, and I will say that having moved here a year ago into this position, it is clear to me how invaluable a service IGR folks provide, both with grant management, federal government, funding, our regional partnerships and so forth. They are just a critical component of just about every area that we do. And it has been clear to me in working with Jean how much more we need to continue to make sure that we integrate IGR in all of our big enterprise initiatives. They do not have a change request in this budget. Here's a high-level summary, and we move into strategic management and administration. To the extent intergovernmental relations is a legislative arm, I would say that in the coordinator's office, the strategic management and administration is the strategic advising and consulting arm of the city. We provide a series of services here, and it's where our results management is housed, where continuous improvement and project facilitation is housed. And with the movement of Jeff Schneider, who many of you know is a longtime city employee, into the city coordinator's office, our policy research arm is also now embedded, and that makes a nice trinity of services, I think, that really is meant to add value to departments as we move forward. Again, this is a general slide of our strategic management administration. A note here to our, this represents a 2012 coordinator management survey. I'll only note that we are actually in the midst of doing a new survey, and we hope to issue that before the end of the year as we really think about, to Spencer Cronk's comments beforehand, that we're really trying to tailor it to be actionable, but also to show how we can be collaborative, transformative, and results driven. So there will be more on that in the months to come. Our first enhancement or change item request involves strategic management and continuous improvement. Of all the services that we provide in the coordinator's office, I'd say that this is the one that is in highest demand and the one for which we are invariably in a position to, unfortunately, have to say no to at times because of lack of resources. And we hear often, if we could only clone Jody Molinar Hansen, we would be in a much better position to respond to some of these requests. And Cloning is not exactly what we're going for, but certainly adding capacity to her services is where we're asking for. So our first enhancement request is really twofold. It is really aimed at $45,000 for programming and about, it's one FTE, about 99, a little under $100,000 for a full-time FTE to really expand the capacity. We have overwhelming demand for these types of services and to allow us to really move forward in that. But what we've also found in this last year as we moved forward with some funding we got in the previous budget that the benefit of having somebody here, an FTE really embedded in the city, is important to leverage those relationships, that it makes a difference when somebody truly knows the city and knows departments to move that work forward. And that in addition, there are some items that really benefit from an external consultant when they're short programs, when they're short continuous improvement or project facilitation request. So we're really looking here to expand the capacity both of other departments, but of ourselves in order to facilitate these larger projects in the city.
Excuse me, just one
Yes.
second before you move that slide. I was looking at the budget summary,
Mhm.
and you said, you just talked about an additional staff person. This is a full-time, ongoing staff person.
Yes.
Then you mentioned $45,000 for program support in some way. Where is that shown on the budget summary? Is that embedded somewhere that I'm not
It is
following?
in the budget summary, Chair Quincy, in the budget summary under strategic management and continuous improvement, it is combined.
Oh, okay.
So what we had thought about was roughly about $100,000 that includes benefits and so forth for an FTE, plus about $45,000 for programming. And so it's just combined then.
So it's combined into that one, and it is ongoing, and that's an
Yes.
additional person. Okay, thank you very much. That helps clarify.
By way of example of some of the projects, and it's really amazing when we were compiling this list, the amount of projects that staff is working on, and this is both in the continuous improvement arena as well as our results folks. You can really see the breadth of projects as we continue to see enterprise, large-scale initiatives coming across the board. So in this past year, they've been working on nighttime mobility management plan, the supplier diversity project, some work in regulatory services. They were instrumental in helping the transgender issues work group do a work plan earlier this year. They're currently helping Public Works with their street paving assessment project. They were instrumental in helping us facilitate the sick leave conversations, and we'll also be tapping them in for minimum wage. They were instrumental in helping in the resident survey design and analysis, and an ongoing work at the request of our staff council direction, or a council direction for staff to work on sick and vacation leave benefits work group. So a variety of projects that are going on board. They're also working on a series of visualizations and reports that stem from the youth violence report to helping the Promise Zone, for example, work on an annual report that should be issued. And to the right, just as a results measure too, I wanted to highlight our great city goal results. We've had to date 5 city goal results roundtables. We've had over 164 attendees, and we've had additionally 9 department results to date, and 1 more that will be forthcoming that focuses on the coordinator department. So there's a breadth of work here, and that additional money will allow us to continue with the demand that seems to be ever growing. Our next change item request centers around enterprise communications. And having been part of some council presentations in the past year, I know that other departments have mentioned this. We have created a group of people, an engagement design team that is comprised of several of our department partners: communications, NCR, arts and culture, equity and inclusion, city clerk, and 311, to really streamline and make a one-stop shop for departments as we move forward. It's really aimed at thinking about the equitable impacts and community engagement in a different way, but also, frankly, from a pragmatic point of view, it's just more efficient to have a group centered on figuring out what are your needs for initiatives, what are your community engagement needs, what are your outreach needs, what are your marketing material needs, and to think about how are we consistent across the board. It is a strategy that we started last year, and certainly one in which we continue to leverage as we move forward. It is also a strategy that has taken aboard some of our additional initiatives and campaigns. Talking is Teaching is one of those in which it's an integrated campaign, and with the money leverage there last year, we were able to really kind of create additional partners and additional buy-in and money really leverage that amount to do great work. And in fact, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn because I've asked Angela Watts, who here accompanies us today at this presentation, but I believe that Kara Dukakis will be coming to the City Council to congratulate City Council and the mayor and the city for this approach. The Talking and Teaching campaign has been, we have been in Minneapolis, one of the only municipalities who have really been at the forefront of this campaign, and it has been really tremendous to see the progress as we move forward. On this slide, I show a little bit about the leveraging and the outreach results that we've talked about that campaign. But I also want to highlight to the left some of the projects as we see in this enterprise communications approach, some of the projects that are really coming to this group. And again, the main, I think the value add to this group is that departments no longer have to seek out individual meetings and perhaps inconsistent messagings from departments across the spectrum, but they really come together and talk about things. So we've got the larger safe and sick and minimum wage, but we also talked about target market outreach as that goes into implementation next year, the 3/11 10th anniversary, public education and rail community preparedness plan, the impound lot. There's a variety of initiatives that have already started coming to this engagement design team. And much like a PRC model, they're there to be the consultants and advisors as that moves forward. And I believe that will really do a service not just to city staff, but also to the community at large as they reap the benefits of this holistic approach.
I'd just like to note, this is beyond just what the communications department is doing.
Yes.
It really is supporting the work of other departments that don't have an expertise in communications. It really brings in more enterprise-wide, as it suggests. I'm looking a lot at public works projects that are out there, and we're looking about how to, and it all ties back to the goals and strategies for the city in the first place. If equity is the conversation, how do we conduct those conversations? And it's well placed within the coordinators department. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair Quincy. Our next item, change item, really is a note that we were awarded a grant under, or a funding source from the 100 Resilient Cities, and that is $150,000. We actually we're planning and trying to have a kickoff before the end of the year. But the interesting thing about the Resilient Cities grant is that it really focuses on beyond climate change and beyond natural disasters, but it really focuses, in our case, on other additional sources of stress and shocks. And one of the interesting things, we just had a conversation with the Rockefeller Foundation, was that they actually chose us because we weren't coastal in a way, that they chose us because we represented a different type of stressor and a different type of viewpoint towards urban resiliency that they're really interested in supporting. The $150,000 allow us to hire a chief resilience officer and to really think about a holistic strategy, again, beyond just climate change and natural disasters, thinking about what happens in the case of civil unrest, or as the incident scenario above suggests, what happens if we had a hazmat incident with all the oil that is transversing through our city, what do we do? And so really aimed at being more comprehensive in our approach to resiliency. The next initiative, and again, this is as in years past, the coordinator's office has been responsible for the oversight of various enterprise partnerships and endeavors. I'll say that last year when we spoke about it, we had talked about kicking off a group to really look at this in depth. And we, as often we tend to do, go big. And so this fall, we are expected to see a report done not just for the coordinator's office, but citywide and enterprise-wide, a review of reports done for partnerships and memberships. The group, which included some council staff members, looked at 391 partnerships, 1,122 memberships across 23 organizations, and 73 organizations that we work with but don't contribute. And we're still finalizing the CPED partnerships as well. And so we're really looking forward to share with you the results of that to make sure that any funds that we spend in the city comply with our public purpose requirements. But in general, we manage and continue to support our major initiatives. I put down some examples of what that looks like as we move forward, but the main goal of this initiative is to continue funding that helps us align to make sure that projects in our area actually respond to the needs of our businesses and the community in which we serve. And finally, in this particular area under strategic management and administration, we have citywide events. It is a topic that I believe everybody is aware of. We have become or are becoming a destination city for a variety of events. But with that comes some necessary requirements to figure out how do we coordinate better? How do we make sure that we've got a placemaking environment that we're coordinating across our internal departments, but also with our external stakeholders? And frankly, how do we make sure that these big city events, while terrific for our economy, also balance the needs of our residents and our businesses alike? And so this change item, which is a $100,000 ongoing request, is really aimed at ensuring that we've got some event coordination moving forward that really complies to both our public safety concerns, but also about how do we include and make sure that these events really actually do bolster our economy as we move forward. Want to highlight briefly the innovation team, and while they do not have a change item request, there is a matching requirement under the innovation team grant that is yet to be determined, not for lack of our work, but Bloomberg Philanthropies is actually changing the way in which they manage some of these grants, and so we're still in communication and conversations with them about what that matching requirement can be. I will only highlight that they will be presenting, and we're working with Councilmember Goodman's office to think about a presentation at CDRS about the innovation team. So I wanted to highlight some of their work and just say that I've included some results measures in there, some of which you may have heard before about their initial rental housing challenge that we've shared, but also they are now at the bottom of the screen working on an economic development and how to increase minority and immigrant-owned businesses. They have just now, right hot off the presses, finished an evaluation of the BTAP program, and hopefully that is something that can move forward before too long, and you'll hear a little bit more about them, but they do not have a particular change item request at this moment. Equity and inclusion is another item that does have a change item request. It has certainly been a topic of conversation throughout the city in the last few years. We are focused in our office on enterprise efforts as well as our community-based programs. And so here you will find not just the enterprise focus, the inward-focused equity efforts, but you'll also find Trauma Zone, our transgender equity efforts, and as we continue to think about things like the recast program, which will be a little bit tied into our resiliency program, and I'll talk a little bit about that. There are several enhancement requests that comprise, and I think we broke those down. Yep, we broke those down in the budget summary. So there is one that I want to make a highlight that in that equity and inclusion, and I'll talk about it, that bullet 4, it is not part of the mayor's recommended budget because we received that grant afterwards, but we were recipients of a $1 million grant on what that looks like. And again, we are trying not to have these be one-off efforts. We've recently joined that contact from SAMHSA with the contact from the 100 Resilient Cities. So we're going to see how those two grants actually fold into each other and work in each other so that we're really thinking about collective impact as that moves forward. But to highlight some of the rationale behind the equity and inclusion change item, it is $40,000 for additional programming. This is really now, this next year, we'll be thinking about embedding equity within departments and thinking about how we create institutional change so that we can sustain our equity work moving forward. This past year has been focused a lot on cultural development and awareness and some foundational trainings. We are hoping now to really move and shift into making sure that some of that work is truly embedded within departments. And we're also like to see about how we develop an annual report on the city's equity and inclusion efforts moving forward. So that programming money will allow us to be able to do that. There's $15,000 for the Trauma Zone, which is really a rental lease space. They are currently in their new home, which is embedded in Neon's space on West Broadway, North Minneapolis. And so we'd like to continue to be able to support that effort. Having the Trauma Zone actually embedded in the Trauma Zone would be a really nice addition and allow them to really leverage their partners in a different way. And then $15,000, a change item support for the Trans Equity Summit. And I just wanted to highlight this one in particular as you look at some of our results. We just recently had this in September. It has been extraordinary work. And from a personal level, as somebody who's just been recently involved in this effort, I will tell you it was moving and fulfills to me a public purpose that really goes beyond some of the other work that we do and giving a voice and a space for transgender and gender nonconforming folks that often find that that space is missing. And I wanted to highlight, and we included some aha moments or some comments and evaluations that we got, because to me that's one of the most moving works I've been involved in as I've been here in the city. So really happy to share that as that moves forward.
Ms. Vera, I was just, before we go off, I was looking back to the recast, the $1 million grant. It shows up in the change item on the budget summary as $1 million, and it has one additional full-time employee attached to that.
It does. There's a Chair Quincy, there is a program manager that is attached to that.
Okay. And then it shows as ongoing, or it's not checked off as one time. Is that correct? Is that a fair assessment? Or?
Chair Quincy, for now it is a fair assessment, although we'll know a little bit more as October kind of comes. We have originally submitted an application for a $5 million grant over the course of 5 years. They have awarded us with the $1 million for next year. And we have some work to do to continue an application process to see if we'll continue that effort in the future. So we were uncertain, but we're hopeful that that'll be able to continue in years to come.
Okay. But for right now, we're calling it ongoing, but it's really a grant-funded position.
Yes.
and funded through that source.
Yes.
So it's not dipping into the tax base. Good. And all the other items seem to be one time within the equity and inclusion. Is that just for, those are one-time events?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I didn't want to cut anybody off on anything. Good. Thank you.
We move towards our sustainability change items. And again, this has been a topic of wide conversation here in the council over the years, even before I moved into the coordinator's office. And really, we have already several initiatives that are ongoing in this area. We need additional funds and resources to continue some of those efforts, as those efforts have been one time in the past. And again, that's perfectly appropriate as we continue to see what are we pivoting to as we make some of our marks in terms of our accomplishments and so forth in years past. We need to continue to support the clean energy partnerships work and really focused on some of the monies in the past have been used to leverage home energy squad visits. They were able to leverage our CenterPoint Energy Partners and Excel Partners to do a pilot community engagement program. And some of those monies will continue to move what the city's goals and vision is in that area. We also are working on a Green Zones initiative. And again, I expect an update to be happening to council within the next month or so on where we are with our Green Zones initiatives. That has been a staff direction that was issued to our sustainability staff earlier in the year. And we will be moving forward with a kind of data-centric approach to what does that look like for the coming year. And we have our large buildings energy benchmarking requirements, and that continues to move forward on how do we encourage energy efficiency actions in existing, not just new buildings. New buildings have an infinite capacity to continue to build that into their design, but in existing buildings, what does that mean for retrofitting, or what does that mean for benchmarking? And that has really been the bulk of the action and the technical assistance here. If we look at some of the results that were obtained in this area, oh, and excuse me, I had not turned to that slide. As we look at some of the results in that area, we can see that in our large energy buildings benchmarking project, we've got 429 benchmark buildings, which constitutes 50% of the commercial building space in the city. And we're seeing trends of energy reductions right now of 7% and want to continue to embed and sustain those trends as we move forward. So that is where those funds would continue to make a difference. And I believe our final change item request has to do with arts, culture, and the creative economy. As we look here again, arts, culture, and creative autonomy drives our citywide and internal arts policy. It's really about leveraging the creative sector talent and aligning with other departmental efforts in this regard as that moves forward. The request here really pertains to our creative city making project. It continues to grow in demand from departments. Last year, we had 9 artists embedded in the following 5 departments: the city clerk, CPED and long-range planning, NCR, regulatory services, and IT, really to generate new approaches to engagement as that moves forward. Having been really familiar with the one in regulatory services, I will say that that is one of the 3 that wants to continue to embed that. And actually, they want to go beyond housing inspections and have it be an approach that everyone, both traffic control and animal care and control, also participate in. So they're really looking to embed a creative approach across their entire department, which has been really terrific. Additional funding will allow us to continue not only those 3 projects, but we've got several more on the horizon that have approached our office for additional support. Recast of the SAMHSA grant has talked to us about community engagements and having do that in a creative way. CPED and the Minneapolis Park Board have asked us to consider a project for the Upper Harbor Terminal and what engagement looks like in that effort. We've got another one with the National Initiative and the Police Department, and with the Midtown Greenway Engagement Project. That has been an approach primarily from CPED. Hennepin County would also be involved in that. And there continues to be a demand, so additional assistance and funding would be used to really leverage those efforts to provide some administrative support and to support those departments as they move forward. It would also be able to leverage that support in the enterprise engagement design team, the equity and inclusion efforts, and also with the comp plan civic engagement efforts. That is a one-time enhancement request as well. And with that, I am done, but happy to stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Certainly a lot going on in the coordinators department. It seems to be, in the last several years, the place where we put things that didn't fit neatly into other departments, but it's also the place that really spans the enterprise and has multiple departments fusing together. So we appreciate the work that's happening in the coordinators department on a number of levels. Are there any questions from my colleagues up here for Ms. Rivera-Vandermeer? Not seeing any. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had to have one more. Ms. Bender, Councilmember Bender, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note, we've really asked a lot of the coordinator's office as we've, as a body, really undertaken a lot of new work around racial equity and climate change, reforming how our enterprise is implementing those specific things. And so I think it's very reasonable to expect that we need to put more resources into those asks. And I don't think we would be able to continue to do that kind of work without it. So I think it's sort of a choice. We can either do it with resources or probably need to scale back on the things that we've been asking for. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Not seeing any others. Thank you very much. Mr. Kronk, what's next? We've got 311. It's going to be up, Tricia. Allow for any transition time. Looks like you're ready to go. So if you could introduce yourself.
Good morning, Chair Quincy, council members. I'm Trish Glover, the director of 311. I've been in this position now for 10 months, and I'm going to go ahead with my budget presentation. As you can see, our org chart is pretty much the same as it has been throughout the years. I think that we've added an operational desk, and what that does is take some of the work off the supervisors when they're busy doing other projects, and we have some CSA2s that can answer questions for our agents. This year, we are asking for $80,000 as a change request in addition to our budget, so that's the only increase that we're asking. That $80,000 is for texting. I'll get into that in just a few minutes. Okay. As you know, or may know, we have just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. 311 has been in operation now for over 10 years. We serve just a little bit over 309,000 calls a year. Each year, that number seems to be growing. Within those numbers, we also do email and we do voicemails. We do about 19,000 emails a year. That number is growing as well. Police reports, we do take some police reports, not all. We do have CSOs, community service officers, that train in 311 for customer service, and they help alleviate some of those police reports. Sorry, I jumped ahead of myself a little bit here. As you know, we are the gateway to the city services. So anytime somebody needs something with the city or any kind of service, if they need to make a police report or a service request for potholes or graffiti, anything like that, they'll call 311 and we will assist them with that or get them to the correct department that they need to do that. Currently, we are open 7 days a week, 7 to 7, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30 on the weekends.
When did we begin the mobile apps self-service?
The mobile app self-service?
Yeah, it was just a few years ago, as I recall.
Yes, I believe it was in 2014.
I'm just looking at the remarkable number of calls or activities that have gone through that since we began that. It's really relieved, I think, some of the phone calls, but it's also just reached out and had more people using that application in addition to the phone calls.
Chair Quincy, you're absolutely right. That and self-service numbers, we're seeing those numbers increase almost on a weekly basis. So the more that we're able to get out into the community, because we do a lot of community engagements, and at those times we take that opportunity to tell the citizens, our customers, about our mobile apps and the way that they can reach us through self-service on top of calling 311 as well. Saying that, as far as community engagement, there's another aspect that we've just recently added in March of this year, and it's the language tree. By doing so, we have when you call 311, you can choose 1 for English, 2 for Spanish, 3 for Somali, or 4 for Hmong. Since we have added that language tree, and plus some community engagements that we've done, NCR as well is in these numbers too, because we work very close with them. And we have been on Spanish radio, did a broadcast on there. Since then, our Spanish calls and the times that they're using the language tree have gone up exponentially. Our Somali calls, we're seeing almost a double in the amount of calls that we have received up to this point of this year from last year. So we will go over 50% higher calls in Somali, and we're still trying to reach out into those communities. Our Hmong calls have not risen as much, but we are working on that as well. The one-time integration cost that we're asking for, $80,000, is for a black box integration. With this change request is because in 2017 we would like to move into texting, and there will not be an agent to customer text. It'll be a, for lack of a better word, canned messages. This request actually came a couple years ago from the speech and hearing impaired community. They've asked for different ways to reach 311. TTY and TDD is still in existence, but it's very antiquated and it's very slow, as well as the relay system that they have to use. It takes a very long time to make a phone call that way. By having texting, they would be able to text into a dedicated number, into 311, questions that they may have, and the service provider that we choose will be able to, from our knowledge base, send back a link directing them to that answer or directing them to a service request and directions on how to do that. So what that integration cost is Blackbox is a service vendor that the city uses, and that's what they're going to charge to take our knowledge base, which is everything that we use, our agents use to get all the answers, and integrate that into the system. We have not put out, we're in the process of looking for verbiage for an RFP for texting, and to date I've not found that. So that is something that we will be doing, the RFP and then RCA, and hopefully have that started by the first quarter of next year, that process, and then pick a vendor to go with texting to satisfy that requirement.
Is that texting service, is that part of the black box change order that you're talking about right now?
Chair Quincy, it is.
Okay. It's not just the support of the People with Disabilities Advisory Committee that advanced this idea. Okay, thank you. Ms. Green, I have a quick question. Is this appropriate to be through a CARS request, or is this something that we can just simply do as a one-time within the budget? what's the best way to handle that from a finance perspective?
Chair Quincy, committee members, that is an appropriate item for the course request.
Okay, it doesn't have to blend in with an IT request or anything, so this standalone.
Chair Quincy, committee members, the actual process that we follow for CARS, whenever it has any relationship to IT, we ask IT to review those projects before they're submitted to the panel.
Okay. Good. Continue.
Chair Quincy.
That concludes. Are there any questions for 311? Not seeing any. I think that we'll take that as a good sign that we're all very comfortable with the work that's happening in 311 with the expansion of services, and it seems to be well run. So thank you very much. We look forward to the next presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. Chair Quincy, council members.
Sure. Our next, I believe, presentation, this will be what the communications department, right? Okay. I see you there. I was thinking, why isn't David coming up here? Oh yeah, Greta's here. We're good.
Communications.
Whenever you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Quincy, council members. My name is Greta Bergstrom. I am the Director of Communications for the City of Minneapolis, and I'm here this morning to present the mayor's proposed 2017 budget for the city's communications department. I'd also like to thank you and the city for my first 7 months on the job. It's been a pleasure serving our residents and businesses and visitors and making sure that we are incredibly increasing access and awareness of city programs, policies, news, and information for everyone in the city as we continue to grow. I'd like to begin the presentation with a brief overview of the communications department and our key lines of business serving the enterprise. We provide services in 4 core areas: media relations, video services, including video production and government meeting broadcasts like these, internal employee communications, strategic communications planning, and graphic design, including both print and digital. In the proposed mayoral budget, the only change request for our department would be a $70,000 enhancement, and that will be to continue maintaining our core communications services, including ongoing professional services and service maintenance contracts, and I'll walk through that a little bit later in the presentation. I haven't been here long, but I have been very impressed with the wide range of initiatives our communications staff is involved in, working in collaboration with departments across the enterprise, from human resources to civil rights to regulatory services and the city attorney's office. In addition to the core services I mentioned just a moment ago, City Communications also provides oversight and management of our 2 cable franchises, Comcast and CenturyLink, marketing and advertising consultation and execution, especially focused on cultural media outlets. And finally, our department is now dedicating more staff focus to expanding and refining our digital and social media presence. I just want to touch on a few of the highlights and kind of outcomes our department has produced over the last year and a half, in some cases before I started. In 2015, we produced 228 media releases and advisories that went out, and the news stories that were generated are roughly a value of over $11 million. In 2015, as you know, the council adopted in April of 2015 the city's new graphic standards policy. I'm here to say that that has been going extremely well across the enterprise, and we continue to move that forward to make sure that we have a definable, legitimate brand image that is consistent and present across the city in all that we put out. In a month later or so, the city added the second cable franchise last May of CenturyLink. This past March, I want to underscore that we were able to launch, and this was in partnership with Neighborhood and Community Relations, the city's new Spanish language radio program on La Raza Radio, AM 1400, and that has been a huge and important success for the city, with staff from nearly every department across the enterprise being interviewed on the hour-long radio program, which runs Monday afternoons. And we continue to really enjoy that and to move. I think it provides superior service and outreach for our Latino-speaking audiences across the city. In September, as you know, we upgraded to HD and shifted the city's government access TV, which is still in standard def, to Minneapolis Channel 14 with high def access to programming at higher station levels. And in collaboration with the City Attorney's Office and Human Resources, we were able to complete the new political ethics video, which I know all city staff are expected to have watched by November 1st. I understand that's going well. The city's social media accounts, including Facebook and Twitter, are really a great opportunity, a growing opportunity for the city, and owned resource for the city to reach and inform residents. Social media is where a growing percentage of the population is, frankly, and where they get their information from. It's also where the city needs to be to make sure that we are reaching them with timely, compelling, and relevant content. In terms of the stats, we have Twitter at City Minneapolis has now over 122,000 followers, and our impressions exceed 3 million. Facebook, we have just under 28,000 followers, and again, that's increased 14% since December. Twitter has increased actually 56% since December and continues to grow. As you know, our department oversees the annual contract for public access services serving our diverse city residents. It includes providing community access for space and technology and equipment and training. You'll hear from MTN's Executive Director, Tanae Wells, a little later this morning. In terms of our enhancement, the only enhancement request, the change that Communications is asking for, is a $70,000 increase to ensure our core communications services, council and enterprise support are maintained and can continue. We want to make sure that we're providing ongoing transparency and access to all the news and information, policies and programs that the city delivers. This is for baseline services to keep web streaming, live streaming going, to maintain the ability to produce the news clips that the city produces on a daily basis and measurement, and to make sure that our control room equipment, video services equipment is maintained should it fail and need to be fixed, and to keep everything moving. In terms of our operating capital and CARS request, we do have one vital request for $50,000. This is for a control room switcher that is now 6 years beyond its lifespan. The switcher lasts typically 10 years. It is now at year 16. It does allow our video services staff to coordinate both the video and audio in production, and it's an essential piece of equipment. It also allows for mobility in live streaming events. For instance, the mayor's State of the City event at McPhail allows for that. And now that we've mentioned we've upgraded to high definition for the city's government access TV, we really want to make sure that we've upgraded that equipment as well. And that concludes my presentation. Chair Quincy, council members, I stand for any questions at this time.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Berkman. Can you remind me, the budget has 12 positions in the communications department.
Correct.
At this point, are you fully staffed?
Chair Quincy, I'm proud to say that we are fully staffed as of September.
That is a big milestone. It took a while to fill some of those gaps, including your own presence here. So thank you very much. I'm pleased that we were able to fill the positions to do the work that we've been piling on in the communications department in the last several years.
Thank you.
Thanks
Chair.
very much. Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Bergstrom, I see Councilmember Gordon.
So as I recall from some earlier budget discussions with communications that there was a line item or a request in there for, I think it was $200,000, so that we could do closed captioning, because we're trying to update and implement our American with Disabilities Act compliance, and we realize this is a real shortcoming. I noticed that's missing from the budget now as it's coming forward, and I'm wondering if there are plans to begin that work next year with existing resources, or to see how we can at least start doing that so we can get in compliance with federal law sooner and also provide those critical services to people with hearing impairments or issues in our city.
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Gordon, council members, that is a very good question. That is not included in this budget request, but my understanding is that that work will be discussed very soon, and the attendant budget for that will also be upcoming. Just
So
not in
we're-
this.
So we're working on it, and we all
We are
recognize
work-
it's critically important, even though
Yes.
the mayor didn't include it in her budget. Okay, thank
It
you.
is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That leaves us with one final department for this morning's session. It's the long and awaited and much anticipated Neighbor and Community Relations Department. Mr. Rubador, whenever you're ready, please.
Chair Quincy and council members, good morning. I'm David Rubador, Director of the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department for the City of Minneapolis, and I'm here to present the mayor's proposed budget for the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department for 2017. NCR is part of the city coordinator's office, and we are a resource department that supports the city's ongoing community engagement work. Over the past year, we have really been under Spencer Cronk's leadership, really focusing in on building much stronger support for the city enterprise and for the city departments. And as I go through my presentation this morning, you'll be able to hear some of those connections and improvements have been made, as well as I've been sitting here in the audience listening to the other presentations, our work coordinating with 311 communications and the other coordinator departments has been greatly enhanced and has resulted in some very significant changes for how we reach and serve the residents of the city. In addition, over the last year, we have focused a lot on inclusive engagement. I'll highlight that as I go through, as well as really focused in on results. Our budget is substantially similar to what it was in 2016 with a few exceptions, and as I go through with the presentation, I will highlight those changes. First of all, starting out on an overview, this is a high-level summary of the department's budget for proposed budget for 2017 compared with 2016. Generally, things are very much similar to what they were before, with a couple of exceptions. The department had a couple of one-time funding items last year, and we have a couple of one-time funding items included this year, so that kind of changes the budget a little bit. As well as I just wanted to highlight on the last program where the neighborhood engagement and support piece, there's a drop in the non-general fund revenue or non-general fund expenditure there. That's specifically the department actually funds the neighborhood organizations through the CPP Community Participation Program and the NRP program. The CPP program is a constant flow of money that goes out every year. The NRP basically is based on, it's a continuing spend down of the existing fund balance, and it's really dependent on neighborhood activity. And really just what we did there was re-estimate about what we expect to be spent in 2017. So there's an adjustment there. I just wanted to highlight that because it appears as a large adjustment, but it really doesn't change any programming within the department.
Yes, from within the 16 adopted budget, are they going to achieve that level of expenditure, or is it going to be rolled over?
Chair Quincy and the council members, we did not achieve that level. That's one of the reasons why it was adjusted down this year.
Right, so that's just kind of those budget adjustments, knowing what was anticipated to be spent, rather than just putting in an over budgeting for something that's not going to be spent.
Chair Quincy, you're correct.
Yeah, great. It's responsible. Thank you.
So going into the core programs, we have 3 core programs. The first of which is access and outreach support. This core program is really in support of the city's work around maintaining and addressing mandated federal civil rights and accessibility laws, and specifically has to do with the work around the Language Access Plan and the Americans with Disabilities Act work within the city, ADA. Regarding the Language Access Plan, it's part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VI, and also part of the Executive Order 13166, which was issued in 2000, which requires that cities provide language services for non-English speaking residents. The department led a major effort to revise our language access plan in 2015, and it was adopted by the City Council in 2015, really putting Minneapolis in a very good spot, the city enterprise in a very good spot about the provision of programs and services, and including non-English speaking people into the decision-making processes of the city. So with that, we've done significant enhancements to our translation and interpreting services, and we have increased our support for other departments in being able to access this service and being able to provide their programs and services to non-English speaking residents. The second part of this is around the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act. The department has made a number of significant improvements within the city's ADA compliance work over the last several years. We have worked with 311 and the Civil Rights Department to revamp and track our grievance and complaint process. We have provided education and training for city staff around effective communications and web content accessibility guidelines. And 3 of our staff are currently in the process right now of becoming Title II, ADA Title II certified, which actually is a professional certification for being able to support ADA work in the city, Americans with Disabilities Act. A larger part of this work has been over the last couple of years working with the Public Works Department as well as Finance and Property Services around an evaluation of the city's current ADA compliance and the development of a new ADA transition plan. The plan is near completion and is expected to be delivered to the council this November, which will also then give a plan for how Minneapolis will continue to support this vital work through the next several years. The last thing that's included in this particular program is the One Minneapolis Fund, which is a small grant program that we use to support cultural engagement and leadership development within cultural communities and connect that work to the city government. Last year, 9 grants were given out under this program. Under the current funding, a similar level of granting will occur in 2017. The next program is Coordinated Engagement Services. This is the bulk of where most of NCR's staff time is at. This is where we support our cultural engagement and outreach services. It's also where we do our work with supporting the city's boards and commissions, neighborhood organizations, and cultural communities. This is also where a large part of our work exists around supporting other departments in their engagement work. This particular program includes the staffing for staff that are dedicated to working within the African American community, the Latino community, the Southeast Asian, East African, American Indian, and with seniors in our city in order to increase connections and engagement. It also includes our staff that actually support the neighborhood organizations in the city. Earlier this year in 2016, the City Council adopted the Blueprint for Equitable Engagement, which has been our framework for really redesigning how we do our engagement work to make sure that we're being equitable and more inclusive. We have adopted an inclusive engagement model, which has been used very effectively on major policy discussions and decisions by the council, which has included, it's a model that we used around the safe and sick time discussion, which is around listening sessions for stakeholder groups that are specifically targeted and where we set up meetings specifically for that. It is also includes the work that we're doing currently with CPAD to supporting their work around the comp plan development and making sure that they're reaching all residents of the city. Under this program also, we have our community dialogues. Our community dialogues are really, our staff spend a lot of time building relationships and connections within cultural communities. And the community dialogues are about bringing city staff out of City Hall and to meeting with community members in the places where they're meeting to discuss ways to develop partnerships to achieve common goals. So this is meeting, in essence, community where community is at and really trying to find alliances about how we can work together. Some of this work has included work around voter engagement. Currently today, we actually have 2 of them going on with the Public Works Department. We've dealt with other issues such as snow emergency and housing. Another thing under this is the learning labs. We have training sessions for neighborhood organizations and city staff around specific topics, which includes renters and immigration issues. As mentioned by, I think, Coordinator Cronk, and is around the engagement design team, the new team that's been established around the multiple departments working together to help other departments in the city really focus in on their engagement work and coordinate that internally. And as mentioned by Director Bergstrom, we have been working with the communications department on other engagements or communication strategies for non-English speaking communities, which has included La Raza Radio, where we have a weekly show talking about programs and activities that are going on in the city. We met, as per the blueprint, we are really focused on measuring our results and our impact of our work. That includes the resident survey. A new version of that will be coming out shortly. Through a variety of new engagement strategies to have people respond to the resident survey, we've seen a doubling of our response rate for people that are participating. We also do our appointed boards and commissions diversity survey and our neighborhood board diversity survey. All three of these reports will be out by the end of the year for the new results of the recent activity. The final program is called Neighborhood Engagement and Support, and really this is where our program money exists for neighborhood organizations. So this is our money for our community participation program. It's the NRP program, Neighborhood Revitalization Program, and the Community Innovation Fund. It also includes funding for the support services that we provide neighborhood organizations, which includes directors and officers insurance, auditing, training, and legal support. Our budget includes two change items. The first of which is $60,000 of one-time money for the ADA action plan. Although that plan is not before you yet, it will be before the council in the next few weeks. And the mayor included $60,000 for the NCR department to start implementing portions of the plan. These are activities that we would like to be doing regardless of the status of the approval of the plan. And that includes continuing to do training for city staff around emerging practices and regulations of the ADA, which includes effective communications and accessibility documents. In addition to that, in 2017, we're proposing to expand our support to neighborhood organizations around technical support about making sure that their program services and meeting locations are ADA accessible. Included in here is a summary of just the $60,000 request of general fund for a one-time expenditure to support this work. The last change item, the second change item, is $20,000, again in general fund for one-time money to support senior support services. The city has a goal of living well, and in that we have adopted the Minneapolis for a Lifetime strategic plan, which is really intended to make Minneapolis a friendlier place for seniors. This last year in our budget, we had one-time money to provide direct support services for seniors in our community. The mayor has proposed to continue to do that on a lower level, but enough money to be able to continue to provide at least one more grant for continuing support in this particular area. And with that, I do have one more slide I'd like to bring up. It got missed in our original presentation, which is just more on the results. As I mentioned, we are we are really focused in a lot on making sure that we measure our results and the impact of our work. And I'll give a couple of minutes for that slide to load up. My apologies for not having this in the original presentation. There you have it. As I mentioned, the resident survey, we've seen a significant increase, a doubling basically of the response rate. As mentioned by in the 311 presentation, the language lines of 311 have been significantly improved as far as non-English speaking communities using that as a service. We consider that a vital equity piece that everybody in the city have access to the information of the city. So that's been a great partnership with 311. We've been tracking our language services, and we were seeing significant increases in the demand of language and translation services. Among other things, the department is also developing an equity scorecard, which is anticipated to be out early next year with a number of these measures consolidated into one place that we intend to have open to the public so the public can track the work that we're doing. So the work that we're doing with the resident survey, the boards and commission surveys, what have you, would be placed in one spot that would be accessible for people to see the impact of NCR, neighborhood and community relations work. So with that, Chair Quincy, it concludes my presentation.
Very good. I was just kind of reviewing the slides. Sorry, I was distracted. Very good. Looks like the trends are in the right direction, and a lot of this is a result of the resident survey. This is how residents wanted services and communicated back with us. Could you speak a little bit about some of the goals that we've been talking about over the last year on diversity within our neighborhood boards and other related activities where we're concentrating people and consciously trying to get a more diverse population represented?
Chair Quincy and council members, yes, I'd be happy to answer that. Regarding neighborhood organizations specifically, we have, through our program guidelines, really in program guidelines that were adopted by the city council this year, removed what we saw as being barriers for people to participate. So that's one aspect of that work. In addition to that, we have our learning labs that we're doing, which are specifically conversations with neighborhood organizations around including people that have historically not participated in neighborhood groups. So communities of color, lower income communities, renters. We've held a number of forums around the city that really have been sponsored and done in partnership with neighborhood organizations around including renters, particularly up in Northeast Minneapolis and Councilmember Reich's area. We've had a number of those, and those are expanding elsewhere in the city. So we have a number of strategies that are going on in order to and continuing to help neighborhood organizations be more inclusive. Our diversity survey, which was just completed, we will have a report to the council by the end of November. It's scheduled to go to the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Commission, I believe on the November 28th of the report from that latest survey. So we track that information to see what kind of impact we've made and how neighborhood organizations are doing in that particular area. In addition to that, I think the other part I just really want to stress is from an enterprise perspective, the department supports many different ways to engage cultural communities. So that when we're doing our work, neighborhood organizations are a tool. In essence, the way I look at it, they're a tool in our engagement toolbox. But we have other tools available, such as the listening sessions that we do, such as the community dialogues, and really, in order to be very intentional about including a multiple level of strategies in order to include people in the city decision-making processes.
Very good. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. I just wanted to point out that the only enhancements are the two you mentioned. They total $80,000. Getting back to the employment question that I've asked all departments, the 2017 budget is recommended for 17 positions. Are you currently fully staffed, or how does that look?
Chair Quincy and council members, we're at full capacity at this time.
Okay.
But excuse me, sorry, we do have one vacancy right now. We do have one vacancy, just recently vacant. So.
Great. Okay. And everything else is a one-time funding request requiring no additional staff. So I just wanted to highlight that for the audience. Good. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Rubiner. That concludes those department budget presentations. We're scheduled for 11 o'clock to be back for the Minneapolis Television Network. Is that correct? So I'm going to see if we can just take a 20-minute pause here, and then we'll reconvene at 11 o'clock for that session. Thank you so much.
There's only